Right, this is part 2. I was going to set up my test gauge and things like this with a light on. However, my battery, my 12 volt battery is dead. It's on charge now, so we'll do that in part 3, doing some tests. But what is oil pressure? Well, it's pressure of oil. No, not really. So what you've got to understand is a very simple thing about physics and pumps. Pumps create flow, resistance creates pressure. How can we explain that easily? So you're watering your garden with a hose. It hasn't got a sprayer on the end of it, it's just an open hose. Spraying your rhododendrons or whatever. And you see that cat, or could be a raccoon, in the little bit of a distance, and your water coming out your pipe is only going about 2-3 feet, you know, regular city water pressure. But if you put your thumb over the end, you can make a jet and get that old cat or raccoon running away. Now, what have you done? You've created a resistance with your thumb which builds up pressure because the pump's still pumping and it's got nowhere to go. So it just comes out of that little space and it makes pressure. And this is exactly the same thing as an engine's running. A pump just creates flow. The resistance creates the pressure. Now, how can I explain that better? Well, I've got some old knackered bearings here. There's a, what's that? Is that a big end bearing? Oh, I think that's a big end bearing. I can't remember. Anyway, been a long time since I've done an engine. But you can see they're coated with a lead, antimony, sort of mix, all sorts of bits and pieces in there. And it's just a very light covering. So when you put this onto your crank, oil is injected through your crankshaft and it is forced under pressure because this is the resistance, so the gap between here and your crank is minimal. So the oil pressure goes through your crankshaft and gets into this gap here, so your crank's actually riding on a cushion of oil. Now, if these bearings are worn, what's going to happen? There's going to be a gap bigger than the diameter of the journal of your crank. So there's going to be a gap. That means oil is going to escape out the sides very easily, and then it's on the road to ruin, because then you're not getting any oil pressure, you're not getting any knocking or anything. Well, you'll get knocking, but you're not getting any pressure built up, and the problem will get worse and worse. There you go. Now, everybody seems to think it's crankshafts that are worn out that will drop oil pressure. Tain't necessarily so. Anything with a bearing or a bushing in, or bearing like this, or a bushing, will allow oil to pass. Now I'm going to tell you some things for 300 TDIs because we're kind of familiar with that. But so here's the 300 TDI camshaft. You can see here, this is where the oil seal runs, but here is where the bearing runs. It's a bushing inside the casing. And notice it's got a gap between here. That's to allow oil to flow. So from the main bearings at the bottom, the drilling goes up through here, and into the head. And this is why there's a restriction in the cylinder head. The hole is actually smaller in the head to build up a little bit of pressure for the bottom end, but not so much for the top end. If you were foolish enough to drill the hole in the gasket a little bit bigger, think, oh, I'm going to get some more oil up there. Yeah, you will. You'll get loads of oil going up to your rocker box where it's not really needed all that much. And you'll sort of starve the rest of it and you'll get low oil pressure. It's a difficult one to understand. But going back to these 300 TDIs, because they had a problem with timing belts, and I've seen this many times, so I always change the cam bushings, you know, the camshaft bushings in the 300 TDI. And if you're going to change them, get them from Turner's because they're reamed, not rimmed, that's bad, isn't it? So they're pre-reamed, so you put them in. If you get the standard bearings from Bearmark, Britpart, well, not Bearmark, but if you get them from Britpart or all makes, they're stock standard and you're supposed to ream them. But if you get them from Turner's, they're pre-reamed. Bear that in mind. But what happens with the TDIs is, in the old days they used to over tighten the cam, the timing belt, and it used to pull the cam a little bit, and it used to eat into the bearing, and you can see it when you take them out. There'll be a high spot where the oil sealers run here, and a low spot either other side, so it's like a step, and that means this cam's being pulled down because of the tension of the belt, and then there's a gap at the top, so oil just dumps out and you've got low oil pressure. Again, not good, is it? Now, where else can you get low oil pressure from? Well, let me just open this and I'll tell you. Now, I'm not going to take this out all, because this is a reconditioned one that I did, but the rockers can be a problem, especially on the old series. The bushings in the old series didn't last very long at all, but again, you've got resistance, so you've got your camshaft pushing up here on the push rod and the valve here, so when this is moving like this, the pressure is exerted at the bottom of this rocker onto the shaft. Now, if there's a problem with oil starvation or oil flow or the bushings wearing, what will happen is this rocker will go up slightly and there'll be a gap at the top, and that's where you'll lose your oil pressure. It'll come through the shaft via a hole here, up here, and it'll try and get out and take the path of least resistance. Now you can rebush these, but again you need a reamer. Fortunately, when I do a rebuild, probably 90% of the time these are fine. But when you strip the shaft down, you'll usually find at the bottom here it's all worn out. Now some cheapskates think, oh, I'll just turn the shaft upside down. Well, that's even worse because now you've got a gap at the top. Even though the bearing's pushing on here, you've got a gap at the top and you'll get low oil pressure. Nightmare, isn't it? So replacing camshaft bushings sometimes is a must, but not always. It's a very tricky subject because they're tricky to put in, especially if you get the unreamed one, because you can't ream them out. You've got to take them out and get some Turner ones. But on the rear of the cam here, especially on a 200 TDI, for some bizarre reason, the 200 TDI rear cam bushing can actually turn in the block. This is not good, because what it'll do, it'll block off the oil supply for the bearing journal, and then it will eventually wear out, and you'll get low oil pressure. So it's not always crankshafts that are the problem. I think people think of that because it's got a lot of moving parts and it's going up and down and things like that. It isn't always the case. The 300 TDI cranks were particularly good. Sometimes we can get away and we look at them, they clean them up, they're fine. Even from standard, they've maybe done 400,000 kilometers and they're running really, really well. But, sorry, I thought somebody was coming. They're running really, really well. But you get the old series ones with a different material, and we were forever grinding them. You could get, I think you could grind them down to 60 thou. But the TDI ones, I think you're only supposed to grind them once, and that's it, it's finished. But I've learnt that you can actually grind them a little bit more. It's the shoulder on the side that's the problem, but that's getting technical. We'll go into that once we get a crankshaft. But generally speaking, 300 TDIs are pretty good crankshafts. Yeah, it seems to me like over the years they've got better metal. I've noticed with the 300 TDI in particular, and perhaps 200 TDIs as well, that I very, very rarely have a bore that's damaged so bad that it requires a rebore. Sometimes it just needs a horn and new rings. The metal was so good. I mean, there's many a time, again, 400,000 kilometers, take the head off, and you can still see the honing marks. Well, if you can see the honing marks, it obviously hasn't worn out. But that's about it really for this section. So you've got to make sure all the clearances are nice and tight to build up that pressure. If it isn't, you're going to lose pressure, and then you can have problems and the oil light comes on. Now, the oil pressure on a TDI, and I think on the 2.5 diesels, normally aspirated turbos, was 25 to 55 pounds per square inch. So the relief valve on the pump opens at 55. Now what I mean by that is the pumps, obviously, if your engine's in good condition, there is a sprung relief valve on the pump set at 55 pounds, so that if your pump's building up pressure because there's too much resistance, it will dump the excess oil back into the sump and maintain a high pressure of 55. Now I have known people put little washers on the springs to build up pressure. This is not a particularly good idea, and you can actually blow the seals off the oil filter because they're not designed to take such high pressure. So bear that in mind. But generally, when your engine's hot, if it's below 25 pounds when it's hot and running, well, maybe it's getting a little bit warm. Maybe a better oil cooler would come in handy. I never ever liked the idea of putting the oil cooler inside the radiator, and especially on a 300 TDI. It was a hopeless design where you had hot water coming in from one side, going across, down and across the other side, and in this end here was the oil cooler. Well, you're getting hot water from the engine that's only cooling down in half the space of the radiator, then nothing, it's just disappearing. It would have been such a better idea to put the oil cooler as a separate item at the front. I don't know why they did it, and maybe it was cheap, I don't know. On the 200 TDIs, where was the oil cooler on those? They were built into the radiator, but it was a different design because the water went, I might be backwards here, so bear with me, but the water went in from the top, the coolant came in from the top, hot coolant, but it was like what's called a full flow radiator. It went all the way across to the diagonally opposite bottom corner. Now that had a chance of cooling down because your coolant's going across the full face of the radiator and getting cool, and usually you can tell by putting your hand at the bottom of the radiator hose, it's pretty cool. Whereas on a TDI, well, it does cool down, but there's just too much restrictions going backwards and forwards, so I never liked that idea. Never liked the idea of putting oil coolers in radiators, because we had one once. A customer turned up and he bought a radiator, put it in himself, and the two oil cooler pipes that come from your housing here is supposed to have a metal clamp keeping the two pieces together. He didn't have that on, and he put a new plastic radiator on, you know, the plastic tank ones. Well, what happened was the vibration of the engine and things like this couldn't cope, the flex pipes couldn't cope with it, and it transferred all that vibration to inside the oil cooler and fractured it on the inside. So engine oil got into the coolant. What a mess that was. I ended up using laundry detergent to get that out and washed it with a steam cleaner. What a messy carry on. So I didn't like that idea of putting oil coolers inside radiators. It seems to be cheap. But there again, where else are you going to put them? You know, you think, well, you're going to put a transfer case cooler on. Some people do that in Australia, or an R380 cooler, AC. If you've got AC, you've got to put the condensator on outside. You're going to have so many radiators, there's not enough space to put it. You know, like places and coolers, there's nowhere to put the front on. Anyway, that's just a little bit of a ramble about that. Once my battery's charged up, we'll test this little device here, and we'll go through some oil pressure switches, because I found some very, very interesting information about them that might be worth knowing. Anyway, see you later.